Before I present to you this video, I want you to understand that I mainly present positivity on this channel, but sometimes with positivity, there is a flip side. The negativity I experienced in 2020 took me 2 years to get to this point to record it and present it to you. So I've had time to deal with it, understand it, and realize what it is. And I share this with you because at the end of the day, the reason why I travel is to meet people, is to have an experience, but also what makes me better in every experience is to strive to leave each situation, each person, each place better than I found it. The one thing I do want to share was the racism and the prejudices that I witnessed. Hey there, welcome to another episode. I'm Juan on this beautiful day in New York and on one of my favorite spots, the train tracks. I want to talk about Sanjuan, Puerto Rico. Usually it brings me joy. My last experience, it's been 2 years since 2020, believe it or not. Pandemic and lockdowns and crazy times. Family and just everyone just going fucking bonkers. And I want to talk about something that really made 2020 worse. I was in Puerto Rico, I was working. It was such a great dynamic to be in. And that was from January through March. I left Puerto Rico in March and returned mid-pandemic. And when I came back, it was like day and night. And I returned to the same job with the same manager, and I say manager because she did not possess any skills that, expressed that she was a manager. It created chaos, and she was making it up as she went. And here I was returning in a very, the world had shut down, including Puerto Rico, and it was every man for himself. That's what it felt like. Including Nomada Hostel, the hostel that I was working at when I returned. And now it were people who actually came to replace us in March and were locked in. No guests, no one else, just those people. So now I'm returning to this madhouse, and I say that I'm gonna try to be respectful as possible. It was like I was invading their space that they were so protective and possessive of, and how dare I? And I didn't realize that. I did not realize I was walking through this crazy dynamic of people being promised that they would get an apartment, or they would get a better job, or this would become, a full-time thing. And these were the promises being made by Nomada Hostel and the manager. Her name is Sanchez. If you ever decide you want to, patronize this hostel, think twice, because I worked behind the scenes and realized that, one, it was slavery. They were not hiring anyone who was going to get paid. They made promises of being paid if you worked X amount of hours. And on top of that, there were no guests. So we're waking up every day, God knows why, to open the windows and make it look like business was usual, but no one was coming for 2 months. They had set it up that the people who were already there were sort of in charge, and these people were promised things that they weren't going to get, so they felt like they were competing with me, and I was just there for getting through the pandemic, doing what I love. But instead, I was being met with people creating drama, setting me up to fail. I was not trained as I returned. Prior to leaving, we had employees, paid employees, and we were the assistants because we were the volunteers. So it was this crazy dynamic setup, and none of the people who used to work there were not being called to work. And the dynamic was even more different because the travelers who were coming were not your typical traveler. They didn't have that mindset of a traveler. I was being accused by guests of stealing, and that's not something I do, you know. And this is one guest who would tell me that, you know, I get drunk and I leave my credit cards, I hide it from myself, so yeah, I lose it. And then he would go tell the manager that I stole it. And thank God, like, the other people who were around were come back and tell me that he was out to get me. And I couldn't believe that because I was doing nothing to this man, you know. The more I tried to do to help, the more they would come at me. Like, I felt like I was being, like, bullied. Like an adult, as an adult being bullied. And I don't know how else to put it, but that is the way I felt. I felt bullied. And like, there were, you know, how women are usually, you know, preyed upon by men. I felt there was sort of a dynamic of that. It was a crazy house. And the more I did, as I said, to help or give or cook or try to create that environment, you know, it was just thrown in my face. It was, you know, they were going to do whatever to make my life uncomfortable. And they did. And my friends were like, why are you not leaving? And I don't know why. I think I was just in a very bad place mentally. It also became a thing about my age. Ageism suddenly. Yeah, it's a real thing. And on top of that, the manager and the owner would go out drinking and come back very drunk. But it was a lot of this really weird dynamic of ownership, and it had this slave mentality. And it's what I walked away with. Nomada was not a very good environment to be in during a bad time because I'd come back from losing so many people, and not once had anyone asked me how was I doing coming back from New York or what my experience was. The one thing I do want to share was the racism and the prejudices that I witnessed. The manager would blatantly lie to guests. And there was one instance that stays with me. There was a man in a wheelchair. He traveled from Australia to Puerto Rico. Here's someone who's traveled across the world to come to your country, chose your hostel. Because he's in a wheelchair, she chooses not to allow him to stay there. There's a ramp created for that specific purpose. There was a room on the floor, the only room that was vacant and very available. And I'm looking at the screen and I can see that this room is available. But she lies to him. Her excuse to me is, well, look at him go down the ramp. He's a liability waiting to happen. And all the amazing reviews that you see online comes from the fact that they make a deal as you leave. You know, hey, you know, come back and we'll give you a discount if you know, write a good, positive review. And there are relations that are happening there, you know, beyond that I'm not going to go into, personal stuff between her, the owner. They drink. It's inappropriate, unprofessional. You know, they grab people, touch people in ways. Going back to the prejudices, you pick up the phone and the owner is on the other line just listening, and she's like, I'll bet that she is black because the way she sounds. And then a person shows up and it's a white person, and she says, well, her boyfriend's black. It's not a positive environment. It may present itself as such. In the end, I knew that I had overstayed my welcome when I started to mess up, and I was done. Be careful in places you choose to spend your money and support, because without you and your support, it will not continue. I hope to God that you take it into consideration and not support businesses like this. My advice to you at the end of the day when it comes to the Nomada Hostel is avoid it. On that note, all right, I take away my positive experiences and the people that I made positive connections. But I thought it's 2022, we're getting rid of the bad. Let's voice it, let's share it. That's what having a channel and a voice is about. So, you know, if I am able to help one person based on my experience somewhere, if it can help them to avoid, you know, a pitfall, that's my job. I've done it. Stay positive. All right, God bless.